Then I saw them at Sophie's party and the penny dropped. And I finally understood that they are a couple. In British English, the penny dropped is a way of saying that I understand, finally. But in this lesson, we are learning many more ways to say I understand except the boring I understand. Stay tuned with me. My name is Michelle and here we go. So let's look at the first way of saying I understand. Okay, instead of saying I understand, you can say I realize, all right? Now this is a slight bit serious. You use I realize for a slightly serious situation, okay? So maybe someone you know is going through a hard time, all right? Maybe they're going through a financial struggle or maybe a broken relationship. And they share their experience, what they're going through with you. So in response, you could say, I realize that it's hard for you. I realize that it's hard for you. So, by using this, you understand that someone is going through something difficult and you understand the seriousness, okay? It's more like putting yourself in someone else's shoe and empathizing with them, okay? Understanding what they are experiencing. So you could say, I realize that it's hard for you. There's another way of using I realize. All right, so recently I was speaking to this girl, okay? I met her just randomly somewhere. And suddenly, as she was speaking, I realized that I had seen her before. So that's another way of using I realize, which means that you suddenly realize something. So as I said, as I was speaking to her, I realized that I had met her before, okay? So you can use I realize to say that I understood suddenly. So these are the two ways to use I realize. This is slightly, I can't say negative, but then when you're trying to empathize with someone, and this is obviously positive and a very neutral and natural response, okay? Now let's move on to the next one that we have, and that is, I managed to grasp. Okay, so grasp means to get hold of something, all right? So you get hold of something when you're trying very hard to hold it, okay? So in this situation, we are talking about concepts which are very difficult to understand. And I'm sure you're aware of them, especially when it comes to grammar. But for me, grammar is not that hard, but economics is, trust me. And often when I'm hearing economists talk and, I barely understand it, but somehow I manage to understand the main points. So I say that I managed to grasp the main points. So I could say it was a very high-level talk, but I managed to grasp the main points, which means I managed to grasp and understand the main points. So I use this to understand a difficult concept. To understand a difficult concept. Okay. So when I say that I managed to grasp the main points, I'm using grasp, all right, like grasping something as a verb, okay? However, I can also use grasp as a noun. So I can say that his grasp of grammar is too impressive for a 7-year-old, which means his understanding of grammar is too impressive for a 7-year-old, all right? The next one that we have is to get the gist of. So gist is different from grasp, all right? Gist means understanding the main points, okay? Here you're not understanding the precise details, like the details of something, but you're only understanding the main idea or the main points. So to get the gist of means to understand the main points. So for me, it's like whenever, and back in my college days, my professor used to start a new topic and I used to be sitting in for the lecture. Obviously, when he starts a new topic, I can't understand all the details. So I simply could get the gist of it, okay? That's how you can use it in a sentence. All right, now we move on to the next one. To make sense of something. Aha. So often it is right before your exam, the night before your exam, that you completely lose sense of everything. Okay, you can't understand anything because everything seems so complicated. Especially when you start to read a new text the night before your exam, it's so unclear and so complicated. And then you ring up your friend and you tell her, I read the paragraph 3 times, but I just can't make sense of it. Can you explain it to me? So this means to not understand something complicated or to understand something complicated. To understand something unclear or complicated. And trust me, if you start studying only the night before your exam, everything will look very unclear and you will not be able to make sense of it. So start studying before your exams. Okay, the next one that we have is I appreciate that. So this is quite similar to I realize, okay? This meaning of I realize, which means that you're understanding someone's situation. Out here, you're understanding why somebody took a particular decision. So, quite recently, one of my friends at work told me that she was quitting. And I asked her, what happened? Why are you quitting? And she told me that her son had not been doing well for a month. Obviously, I knew that. But then she told me that she's a single mother. And that's why she needed to take care of him. And she gets no time to take care of him while she's working. So she needed to quit. To that, I told her, I appreciate that it's a hard decision for you, which means that I understand the reason why you took that decision. So I appreciate that means to understand the reason, all right? When you understand a reason, you say, I appreciate that. And you actually are appreciating. You're telling them that what they did is very good, okay? So to understand the reason for a decision. Okay, now let's look at the next one. Comprehend is almost a near synonym to I understand, okay, the word comprehend, but this is very formal. You might have read it in newspapers or you might have heard it on the news channels in news headlines. So if you know, maybe one country is being bombed by another country, not on a very serious scale, but just on the borders, maybe you know, light skirmish, okay, which is like small fights. So you might hear it in the news that the country has failed to comprehend the threat, okay, which means they have failed to understand the threat from XYZ country. All right, so this is a formal way of saying I understand, usually used in writing, okay. All right, and just to add on, get the gist of, you can also get the gist of a written text or a spoken text. If you're reading an article, you can get its gist, okay? Now we move on to the next one that we have, to get it. Now this is very informal, just the opposite of comprehend. You cannot use comprehend in your everyday speech, but you often use get it, okay? Get it means to understand something. It's simply a very informal way of saying I understand. So if there's a new singer and everyone's going crazy about him, you could say, why is everyone going crazy about him? I don't get it, right? Which means I don't understand. Or you could say, I don't get what the fuss is all about. So get here is used to say that you understand. Okay, now let's look at the next one that we have. I get the message. Okay, this is tricky. This is usually used when you understand the hidden message behind what someone is saying. So if your husband is going out for a dinner with his colleagues and he's stressing again and again that it's a formal dinner and we are going to discuss about work, you should understand that you shouldn't accompany him to that formal dinner, possibly because it's a work dinner and you know you'll only have colleagues there. No one's bringing their family along. So you could say, I get the message, which means that you get the hidden message or the indirect message. To understand the indirect message. Great. Now we have the last one, and this is to get the picture. Okay, this is usually used for situations, okay, essentially, or talking about personalities or situations. So if somebody is telling you, okay, this person is quite forgetful, and he's not the most organized person, you could say, oh, I get the picture, which means I get the hidden meaning or I understand the situation, all right? So to understand the situation. Understand a bad situation. So I get the picture is usually used for a bad situation, okay? And you could use it when someone is telling you about something that happened which was very bad. And you could reply, okay, I get the picture. All right. So here we have different ways of saying I understand, very different from saying I understand, which is pretty boring. And I hope this lesson was quite successful for you to learn different ways of saying that you understand something, which could be I realize, I managed to grasp, I get the picture, I got the message, etc., etc., etc. So don't wait, use them every day and get more fluent. Thank you so much for having me. This is Michelle signing off. Bye-bye.